So that's my hair masking, really basic. Let me reposition the woman just about there. Now I have to make the woman match the background, and the way we do that is using adjustments. So the first thing I'll do is use a hue saturation and reduce the saturation to -40. And another thing that I want to do is start adding some effects using layer styles. So the first thing I'll do is use a gradient overlay, because I want this part of the woman to be darker than the right side. So I'll use a black to transparent, but first I have to reset my colors. Go back to gradient overlay and choose the black to transparent, and set the blend mode to overlay and reduce the opacity to, let's see, about 40%, and increase the size. You can click and move to position this gradient wherever you want. Let's leave it there. Let's see before and after. So we add a bit of darkness on that part. Let's see, maybe soft light works best. Yeah, I like soft light better. Okay, something like that. I'll increase the opacity just slightly. And a before and after. Okay. And the next thing that I'll add is a levels adjustment as clipping mask. The hue saturation was also used as clipping mask. And I'll increase just a bit the shadows. Let's go 4. And for the midtones we have to make this darker, so let's go to 1.6. It's too dark. Let's go with 1.75. 0.8, it's enough. Okay, so that depends on how you like the image, but okay. And one other thing that I want to add is some rim lights here from the car headlights. So I'll use inner shadow, and of course the angle has to be something bigger than 90 degrees because the light is coming from the right side. And let's add about 6 pixels, and the size, let's go to about 20. Set the blend mode to color dodge, and let's see what color we can use. Something like that works nice. So it just adds a bit of light there, and this is a technique that I use in many of my tutorials. And you can set the opacity to 100 or just use a brighter color. Do not use a too saturated color because you can see it's not looking too nice. Use just a bit of tint there, and almost gray, as you can see, and click OK. It's too strong, the highlight there on the hand, so I'll probably use a darker tone. Okay, something like that. Just use your judgment there. One other thing that I want to add is some more light here on the face, and I'll do that using a layer and a brush. I'll use a soft brush. Leave the opacity to 40, and let's set the flow as well to 40, and change the blend mode to, you can use overlay, but I like color dodge. And again, I'll use a unsaturated yellow color like this. Let's see if this one works. I don't really like how that looks. And reduce the opacity a bit. So you can see that this is just a trial and error until you find the right color, and you can always use the hue saturation and desaturate the color if you think it's too strong. Okay, so before and after. Let's name this face light. And one thing that I forgot to do is smoothen the skin, and I use the mixer brush tool for that. So what I have to do is disable all these layers and create a new layer, and I'll name this smooth skin. Okay, next you can add some shadows for the woman. Do this really quick using the brush tool. So just paint a few shadows there, like that. When you make soft shadows using the brush tool, it's better to use low opacity brushes and just go several times over the same area. And paint some stronger shadows right here where the boots touch the ground. Okay, and something like that. So you can see that it looks a lot better with those shadows there. Now you can use the dodge and burn technique. So I'll use my action. I have an action for this, but I already have a tutorial on that. Basically you create a new layer, you fill it with 50% gray from the edit fill menu and choose 50% gray, and then change the blend mode to overlay. And now you can use the dodge tool to enhance the highlights. And let's see, an exposure of about 12. It's okay. And what I'll do is, especially here on the woman's dress, enhance all the highlights. And I'll show you the result when I'm done. I'll just do a quick demo here to show you what you can get with this tool. The important thing when you dodge clothes and things like that is dodge these highlights here on these folds. You will create more dimension, so to say. You make the image look a bit stronger and more, I don't know, I like how it looks. And if you're dodging skin, use a really low exposure of about 4, 5, maybe even less than that, because on the skin the changes are really obvious, but on things like this this dress here, you have to use bigger exposure values. Let's switch to the burn tool, increase the exposure to about 10%, and now go and burn the shadows. You can see that the changes with the burn tool are a lot more visible, so use a low exposure value. Let's go with 5. And now follow all the shadows, and just burn all the shadows. And in a second you'll see the before and after. I will only burn here the dress of the woman and maybe some parts of the scene, but I will not go on the skin because it's just the same. I just wanted to show you the technique. So let's see a before and after. Before and after. You can see that now this looks a lot stronger. And of course you can do the same here on the floor. Let's use the burn tool to emphasize these cracks here and the texture on the floor, and darken this part of the car's front. If you hear some scratches, it's just my tablet. I'm using the tablet, I'm not using the mouse, but you can use the mouse as well. I made the original artwork using the mouse almost all the time except the dodging and burning, where I used my tablet because it's easier and it's a lot quicker to do, but you can use the mouse as well. I don't like this brush. I'll increase the exposure just a bit here to burn the floor, but it's too much. 16 is too much. And let's enhance a bit the lights here on the wall. Okay, so this is a before and after. Let's burn some parts of the car here as well, and use the dodge tool on this chromed part of the car. Okay, so that's all with dodge and burn. You can spend here as much time as you want. The more details you cover, the better your image will look. But let's move on. One other detail that I wanted to add is a glow of light here, and I used a big soft brush, set the blend mode to screen, and I used the dark orange color. Let's see if this one works, but a bit smaller brush and more saturated. Okay, something like that, but it's too bright. Okay, this one looks better. So just some white here from the car headlights that's passing between the woman's legs. And let me add more details. Let me add the barrel. Remember that I have them extracted from the background. And let me make it just a bit smaller and place it here. And let's name this barrel and name this one glow. Okay, here we need more light effects to make this barrel blend on the background there. The first thing we need to do is darken this part, the right side, and then create some shadows. So I will start with using layer styles to make this part darker, and I used a gradient overlay, and the angle that I used for that is about 180 degrees. Let's go with 175, so that way we have that dark part there, and this one is brighter because here we have the headlight and the bright part of the barrel is this one. And you can move the gradient there and change the blend mode of this to linear burn and change the opacity to 29%. I also used color overlay, and the color that I used for this is a dark brown. there. The blend mode used is soft light at 100%, so leave it there. Now you can see that the barrel is a lot darker and it blends a lot better. We have this bright part and this dark part which is close to the wall. And another detail that I added is a rim light using inner shadow. It's better to start by changing the blend mode to color dodge so that you can see how the colors that you will choose now behave. And I used again an orange color like that, and you can see that light there. Let me use a white color so that you can see it better. And I'll use a color like this. Click OK, and let's see, about 10 pixels of distance, and the size about 17 or 18, and increase the opacity to 100%. And that's all with the layer style. Let's click OK. So let's see a before and after. So you can see it's a really dramatic change. And let's go with the shadows now. Well, actually let's desaturate this a bit. So create a hue saturation as a clipping mask. So press Alt, place the mouse between the two layers and click. And let's reduce the opacity to about -50. And that looks a bit better to me. And now let me make the shadow of the barrel. And I'll use the brush tool. I'll use a soft brush. Set the color to black. Decrease the opacity to about 20%. Make the brush a bit smaller. And just paint some shadows here. This part that is right next to the barrel should be almost completely black. And also darken the bottom part on the floor, like that. And let's make some detail shadows here. So I'll increase the opacity a bit. I'll use a smaller brush and a harder one. Okay, that's better. And just a bit more shadow here. And if the shadow is too strong, like in my case here, it's a bit too strong, I'll use the eraser tool at a really low opacity and flow. And I'll use a soft brush and just take away some of that shadow. Okay, that's a bit better. And let me show you before and after. So that shadow makes things look a lot more realistic. That's why I said that shadows are really important in any manipulation. And more details, then I added this cigar. And again, I'll show you some light effects that I applied to this. So let me paste that here, make it smaller, like that. And you can see that the top part is a lot darker. So what I'll do is flip it vertically because I want to have the shadow on the bottom, and place it there. And let's name this layer. And in order to lit this cigar, you can search for coals on DeviantArt, and I think I used this image. And what I'll do is right click, copy image, create a new document and paste it here because I only need the part of it. And I'll select this part here, copy it, close this document, paste it here, and I'll create it as a clipping mask. And what I'll do is flip it horizontally and make it smaller, like that. put it there, and I'll use a layer mask for this layer and just mask that hard edge there. Let me increase the brush size and the brush opacity. Okay, so that's how I added the fire on the cigar. And once you have that, create some shadow for the cigar as well, like that. And I use the soft brush. Let me reset my brushes and reduce the opacity to about 20%. So as you can see, when I make shadows, most of the times I use a really low opacity brush and just make multiple passes. So that's how I made the shadow. And then some light effects for the cigar itself. I use the gradient overlay at and the angle that I used for this, I don't know, it depends on how you place the cigar, but try to reduce the scale and try to have parallel. Let's see, this one should be okay. Increase the size, change the blend mode to multiply, and maybe move it slightly, and you can see the effect. It just adds a bit more shadow on the bottom part, but that's just the details. And you can also play with the scale if you want to have more or less effect. And then again, I used inner shadow on color dodge, just to have that light on top again, like that. Reduce the distance and also make the color darker because the light is too strong, and reduce the size. And something like that. So let's see a before and after. Let me deactivate the effects. So before and after. Let's go to 100% zoom. Before and after. Just adds a bit more realism, I think. And in order to make the smoke for the cigar, I use the brush. You can search here on DeviantArt. Let's see. Smoke brushes. And I used one of these brushes here. These are really good for cigar brushes, for cigar smoke, sorry. So I downloaded one of those brush sets that I just showed you, and let me paint some smoke there, like that, and reduce the opacity just a bit, like so. I also added a bottle here, but I'll skip that part because it's just the same as the cigar. Just add that there, use layer styles to shift the light a bit, and you're good to go. Let's go with the final adjustments. And the first thing that I used is a gradient map, and I use this default gradient, this 3-color gradient, and I set the blend mode to lighten at 15%. And after that, I created a stamp with the keyboard shortcut Shift, Control, Alt, and E, and that creates a stamp of all the layers merged into a new layer. And I went to Image, Adjustments, Variations, and I added more blue and more cyan. Click OK, and I got this blue tone. And I set the blend mode of this to darker color, and the opacity I set it to 10%. So it just adds a bit of blue here on the shadows, and I like this kind of a blue tone to my images. And then I created another stamp, again with Shift, Control, Alt, and E. And I apply the sharpen filter. And this is just the final effect to sharpen the image. So I went to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, and I used the really high radius. Let's see, this also depends on the canvas size that you use. For this one I'll use about, I don't know, 5 pixels, but for high resolution images like 4000 pixels you can use a radius of about 20 pixels and reduce the amount. So let's set the threshold to 0 and click OK. And next change the blend mode to darken, so that sharpens the darker parts of the image. And then duplicate this layer with Ctrl J and set the blend mode to lighten, and that sharpens the brighter parts of the image. And now I'll group this and reduce the opacity of the whole group until I like the sharpening amount that I have. So you can see a before and after. I'll increase the opacity so that you can see it better, because on the video I don't know how you can see it. So before and after, it just adds more sharpness to the image. So that's how I made this manipulation. I hope you liked the tutorial. It was a bit long. I think this was the longest tutorial I ever made, and it was also a bit more advanced, as I already said. It's for more advanced users. Thank you for watching, and if you have any problems or any questions, just post a comment on YouTube or on my website. So again, thanks for watching, and see you on my next tutorial.